All right, it's Mike Smiles with Smile Studio. This is an introduction to our discussion with Bill Fahili, Mark Gibson, and Mark Benson about the boomer generation and our observations of the crisis that's happening with young men today, the Gen Z crisis. What we're finding here is a serious situation of the lost or left behind generation of the Gen Zers today. And the crisis is serious with a 55% employment rate. That means 45% of the people are not employed, young men 16 to 25 years old. And the boys who meet the National Honor Society are only 10% compared to girls are 90% of National Honor Society graduates from high school are girls or women. So there's something going on here. We wanted to get to some of these stats. And we recognize that the difference between our generation, the boomer generation, and the Gen Z is really significant in terms of the loneliness factor. And we are blessed in boomer generation to be fairly comfortable with other people and have friends. In terms of meaningful work, again, the Gen Z men do not seem to have the kind of work that provides purpose going forward compared to the boomer men. The sense of purpose itself, how people feel about being a man and what your role is or what your role in society is only 25% compared to Gen Z or boomers who are at 62%. And the concept of confidence, of course, is another factor that's affecting young men with a lack of confidence. They subsequently are suffering from anxiety or depression, and this is serious to the point of creating a national crisis here in the United States. And this sort of friendship gap is something that is pretty consistent.
Today, I thought we'd focus a little bit on young men, Gen Z men. There have been a lot of articles lately about their falling behind, having anxiety issues. The cliche is that they are living in the basement with their parents, playing video games. They seem to have anxiety over approaching women to have a date, and yet at the same time, they're becoming increasingly more isolated. The employment rate is rather low, 55% at that, I think it's 16 to 25 demographic. And they're also becoming more vulnerable to podcasts espousing some strange ideas about manhood. I was just talking to Mark, the idea of the red pill, since we know that in this world that it's just competitive, that you have to be the apex of what manhood is. If you take the red pill, that means you have to look the part, you have to be financially above your competition, and some of these things. The look maxing part, which is the strange part too that we were talking about, is this whole idea of if you don't have the atypical jawline, the pecs that are desirable, all that stuff, that you are a bottom tier guy and having difficulty maneuvering in this world. So those are some of the things that I picked up in a little bit of the reading.
He's
He's a good example.
He thinks competence at a vastly complex and nuanced job of huge importance is reflected in his ability to do push-ups.
We're fucked.
The Secretary of HHS has clearly abused anabolic steroids in order to have, the frame of a 40-year-old weightlifter.
I think that goes to what these guys are searching out things. And on the podcasts, it's almost like Hegseth and all those guys are part and parcel of this Joe Rogan red pill like world of men have to take back what is rightfully theirs and show themselves as strong, decisive, and financially successful at any cost. And it's just ridiculous.
And it creates a definite sense of hierarchy that one has to fit oneself into. Where do I fit in the hierarchy of manliness? And the alternative is a much more complicated and subtle viewpoint that I think we all would find preferable, which is to enjoy the differences, to honor the uniqueness of each individual as a complete work in its own, and therefore not to be compared to another. Just like when you go to a fine art museum, a good one, you don't have any inclination to rank the art. You see each work as something wonderful in its own, and you appreciate seeing so many different kinds. But that's not an easy thing to inculcate into a culture, because I think human nature likes to rank.
Yeah, and I think that's what is occurring when you talk to Gen Z women. Well, yeah, I mean, it does seem like this is a source of pain for these young people. It's a source of pain that they can't connect. It's a source of pain that they feel like they're not going to have the house and the relationship or whatever, if they want. Not everybody wants that, you know, but I think, and so you're wondering, like, is it a fear of rejection? Have we gotten so far down the road of protection that we're so fearful of rejection that we're not taking initial steps that were often rites of passage?
I want to pick up on that, Bill, because one of the topics we're not talking about for young men is the proliferation of pornography. I mean, when I was a kid, my father could not talk about sexual education, but as a young man, for us, it was like, where are the playboys in the father's whatever, trying to learn what's going on. And that whole nervousness today it's prolific. It's everywhere. And the young men today are exposed to it at a young age. They're gaming. They have a whole gaming tech online screen time that must be exposure to easy pornography. For us, it was climbing up the back stairs, finding the thing, running away if somebody were around. And I think that might behaviorally have an issue. And there is this sort of lack of societal discussion about becoming a man and what that responsibility is, or impregnating somebody. I mean, sexual education I got in 8th grade, but I still think that one of my kind of aha moments today in terms of what would be some tools or group activities that could help young men understand not real, and basically helping people to get out in the world, to go to a square dance or to go to an experience where you're going to have a setting where, if you're taking dance lessons or those types of things.
Certainly the proliferation of what you can find online, which pornography is rampant, but even if you just go to TikTok or anything else, you're going to be bombarded with sexuality and what it means to be sexy or with it or whatever. And it just seems like that's led to even more confusion in young people.
And it's not just in the recesses of the internet. Our president boasted about grabbing women by the pussy. I was listening to something where women were being interviewed about whether that made them not want to vote for the president. And there's a lot of gratuitous sex in films now, and
all the apps, right? Tinder and all these apps that.
I have a granddaughter
for
she got
sexual
1,600
contracts
on her SATs, and she went to the University of Wisconsin. And she's finishing this year, cum laude, summa cum laude, I don't know which, in physics and biochemistry. She's a bright girl, and she's applying to medical school. She's going to have a gap year to work in a lab, and then she's applying to medical schools for 2027. She's a lovely kid. But my wife follows her on Facebook. I don't have any social media, so I have to tune into Mary's Facebook visits to see grandkids. And over again, this intelligent, ethical, hardworking, very hardworking young woman posts herself, with the camera showing off a huge amount of cleavage or very short shorts in this way that no young woman in my age generation would have done. The most they did was, if they were cheerleaders, jump in the air and do a sort of splits in the air. And we'd all wonder if we could see their underpants or not. But that was about as far as anything in my young experience went. And so much has changed. And it's so hard to pinpoint those things that are really taking apart young men's experience. I did look in preparation for the meeting, a brief Google search of what women seek in men. And I looked at there's some good, like Psychology Today has a thing somebody wrote. And one of the most common attributes is confidence. And one of my thoughts about this issue is how much what our culture is doing is making men insecure and unable to express themselves as confident individuals. They don't like arrogance. They don't like self-absorption, but they want people who are confident to be around, that have as a partner. And I think what you've outlined, Bill, describes a lot of insecurity.
Yeah, I agree too. I think I saw something along those lines and it said confidence, intelligence, and certainly they want a degree of security. I think that's still part and parcel of why people come together. Security could mean different things, though. It's like, can I trust this person to be with me through changes? Because everything now is in flux. What really, this conversation is bringing up this idea in me, and I think when I was listening today to some of these podcasts, is we, and with what Mike was saying, I didn't know if I wanted to go to college or whatever. I wasn't the greatest student in undergraduate college, but I paid for half my college. My dad paid for half, and it was $4,000. It was freaking $4,000, and I got a little book and I paid back my college degree, and my graduate degree was even cheaper because I got a teaching assistantship or whatever. But today, these decisions to go to college are multi-$1,000 money decisions for people. And we're also hearing more and more, is it worth it? Is it worth it? And then people look online and they go like, hey, I have 1,600,000 followers and I'm making six figures, talking like us. Nobody's watching ours, but somebody is watching
Getting there.
We're working on it. But so I think some of it has to do, and Galloway talked about our generation did a pretty good job of keeping the money for ourselves, but not making things affordable for the next generation. Like how did it happen? I mean, how did it happen that these things became so expensive and so difficult? How did it happen that we have to live in, there's a house going up down the street at 6,000 square feet. I think it's just a couple that's going to be in it or whatever. When we would bring up families in 1,100, 1,200 square feet houses. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, I think last time we talked, Mark Gibson talked about this, like we're just the marketers now. We're just marketing individuals, we're just part of the whole cog, in the wheel of progress that has to keep going. And if you're not, and if you talk that way, and if you're not, according to the Hexes and stuff, you're just an idiot. In some ways, you're an idiot for going into education, like I'm going to teach. Oh, really? Good luck with that. What are you going to make? 45,000 a year? Fantastic. You're kind of a doofus in their eyes.
Observe in general that we're unique to the extent that we acquire stuff. We have a lot of stuff. If we all reflect on our childhoods, our homes were very simple. We had one bathroom and 4 kids, half bath in the basement. I don't know what the house was. That might have been more than 1,500 square feet, but it wasn't. And it was a lovely house, and I never thought of it as inadequate. It's what we could afford with my dad being a university professor. And so we've created a world that to have what is considered a successful set of acquisitions includes a house much bigger than people need, like you say. I mean, people around us are building even bigger houses, 10,000 square feet. What do they do with it? And stuff, just stuff. Garages full of 4-wheelers and skis and bikes that cost $1,000 a piece, and kitchens full of different kinds of blenders and air fryers.
You gotta see George Carlin's monologue on stuff.
Yeah,
That's
the
hilarious.
level of stuff you've got to reach to be okay is so huge that we have priced ourselves out of being okay. But that's a question of values and a distinction between materialism and the good. And that, I think, sets a very high bar for young men. I don't see how they can get there from here.
There's that unrealistic expectation that also comes with this investment parents, families are making in children, or in particularly men, who want to be elite athletes. And there's a whole world that's developed of special coaching in the high school level.
Yeah.
And now all the way down into middle school camps, where these communities are growing up, where kids go to an 8-week soccer camp, and their photographs and their images of them going with AI, tracking them down the field so that they can use them for recruitment purposes. It's similar to the concept for jobs too. There's a sort of expectation that you are going to go to college and you're going to have a white collar job. And that's coming under scrutiny with this whole coding world that AI is replacing people. But how do we right size that expectation? Perhaps to your point, like I'm going to have a big house, or I'm going to go to college at a local community college, and I'm going to get a job on Wall Street.
It is set up so you really have very few winners.
Yeah.
And everybody has to walk around feeling like a loser.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like
that's a good point, Mark.
One of the things that, and it's kind of difficult for me to learn, but it's like, I think that these young people, especially Gen Z, the latest, are not to blame. Like, they should not blame themselves completely, like feel like that they're just failures. And because I think we, like Mark Gibson said, we've set up this unrealistic, we were part of the golden age, like when they see these houses and all these things, that came from like GI Bill, first house, 30 years, pensions, all this stuff. And then we're looking at them and saying, hey, get your shit together, Yeah. And yes, part of a parent is you have to somehow figure out how to take care of yourself. That's the biggest thing. But to do that in a gentle, supportive way sometimes takes patience. Like I realize this is not the same. It's not, I could go down in high school, I could go down the street to any store or whatever, and I could get a job. I just would walk in.
And the thing is, we boomers know all this, right? We know we are the richest senior generation. And there's poor people too. I mean, among boomers, there's
Right.
range everywhere. But, you know, parents are having to and want to help their kids buy their house. I mean, that wasn't something we experienced because our parents didn't have any money.
Yeah.
But it didn't cost us, as you point out, Bill, much to go to college. Well, now we boomers are riches, and we don't care because we're not ensuring that kids have health care, that there's public education for our future. We're just like hoarding it and then gonna go away with it.
Yeah. Something happened along the way from hippie to I got
Yeah.
everything. But I think what you were just saying is, well, that's another aspect. Like when you do have the ability to do it, how much do you help a young person? Like it brings up, there's a lot of things mixed into this. Like, are you enabling them to not move on? How much is appropriate to help? I know Sam wanted to have us invest some in his recording studio. And I said to Celeste, it has to be a business arrangement. Like we have to set up these things where, okay, give us the business plan, give us this, give us that, after a certain amount, you pay back, or something, because otherwise we just keep perpetuating this idea of, well, we'll be there to help.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know if that's the answer.
No, I totally agree with that, Bill. And I wasn't referring to the individual level because I know it's totally complex about that. But as a society, we're voting for two parties that both want to continue the same pattern of tax breaks for the wealthy and not enough for the people. And that falls on young people and people who are at the margins more than most other people.
And 2/3 of our Congress is within 10 years of dying.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
It is.
So the youth, if they could get on it, we could have quite a change, maybe.
Bill and I, this is a funny story. We did a little playwriting experience. Bill mentored me in songwriting and a play, as one scene, I guess you would call it. And it was about these generational differences, right? And so I had to study it up. And one of the interesting things about that, Bill, was that the boomers have occupied the presidency since, is it since Kennedy? It might be since Kennedy. Check me on that. But it's been every single president, Obama, Bush, maybe since Reagan, I'm not sure. And then before that, it was only GI presidents, like it skips a generation. And so I'm counting on the millennials here to come through for us.
Yeah, I think the millennials are in better shape
Yeah,
overall,
yeah,
they
are. They at least have jobs, right?
Yeah.
They're
So,
struggling, but they have jobs on average. Yeah.
are we at an impasse here? Let's just close this up with some ideas, because I have thought that maybe there's a way of me getting involved in mentoring or something. We actually see a need, so there might be a way to help in that in some regard,
I wanted to mention that because for me growing up, my father wasn't a great mentor for me. He was like, just go do something else. But
Right.
having an interest in people who did something else and learning what that was because they were not taking a train into New York City working in a suit. These people who I found influencing me were people like a plumber. I was just interested, like, what? Look at this guy. He gets to go home and have lunch with his friends. I ended up being attracted to people who were in the administration of my college. A young president, the person who was heading the student affairs program. And those people in my mind, I'm like, how do they get to be that? How did somebody become a college president? What were the aspects that led him or her to that career? And those different exposures to mentors that I was seeking, having that as a real process, the guidance counselor role in my high school was very helpful to me. Yes, your dad went to Brown. Yes, your older brother went to Brown. Your two younger brothers are going to go to Brown. You don't know it yet, but you're not going to be going to Brown because it's not a good match for you. And that was the voice that I really heard. And he was taking a great interest in having the right college choice and that career decision or questions about a gap year. There really is a role for that person who is your guide leader. And of course, I've started a company called Guide Leaders. I'm very interested in the subject, Bill, related to small, agile groups of people who learn together, taking online classwork, which is inexpensive. And you can get the credentials from Ivy League schools, which have never been available before. And you can create a local cohort of people who are learning in Utah or learning in Nashville, and they're getting degrees from Stanford and Princeton and Harvard, certificates on their LinkedIn accounts, and they might be doing something quite practical with a local mentor, volunteering as a capstone project in their communities or going for a bike ride together, and essentially creating a new modality of a low cost but also hyper local experience where maybe you are living in your parents' basement, but you're part of something that is potentially doing push-ups like Egg Seth, who knows? So that's something that I've been very interested in. And one of the documentaries of Scott Galloway was talking about the mentors for students today or kids today are things like Joe Rogan, they're social influencers, or the president, as you said, Mark. And how do we introduce new person accountability that is that sort of deep training when you see these coaches the actual athlete who does make it, the Michael Jordans of the world who do make it, and they say, I want to have that experience. They're like, well, see you at 4:00 in the morning. We're going to be over here at 4 a.m, starting our day. I mean, the concept of rigor, the concept of getting up early, the concept of accountability and actually doing the hard work, exercising the muscle of learning as a team, or if you're an athlete, actually doing the incredible skill work that you're going to need to be an expert. And
Well,
I love your idea of being a mentor, Bill.
it's kind of like that Navy guy, commander said, first make your bed, like teach your kid first make your bed in the morning.
Well, that was Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
That was, I think, the first of his 12 steps.
Yes.
People give him a bad rap, but I think they tend to throw out the baby with the bathwater. He is about that fine word you used, Mike, accountability. He believes in honor and integrity, honesty, and he talks about those things along with some of the other crazy stuff he digresses into. I wouldn't know how to mentor a 18-year-old. I spent my career mentoring medical students and residents and fellows in training and so forth. And I learned that I was effective with people who wanted me to mentor them. And those people were the curious ones. They were curious. And a lot of people in medicine, in training, aren't that curious. They want to know how to do things, but they're not intensely curious about the miraculous processes they're interacting with. But some of it, so I'm not sure I'd have a lot to offer a young adrift guy, because I was never that, and I never had to fight my way out of it. I always just wanted to figure out the next thing, and I kind of followed my nose and wound up where I did in my career. I mean, I wasn't going to be a doctor when I went to college. And so that's sort of my personal view of it. Underneath all that, I come back to that column by David Brooks. Did we talk about that?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
A little bit, but today, but a little bit.
He talked about, he used, I think, the words moral foundation. And I think we're trying to put icing on a cake that we don't have. I don't know, but there was at one time in this country, I think, a shared basic sort of Judeo-Christian shared moral foundation and a clear idea of what a good person was, what a good man was. It was Beaver Cleaver's dad. He wasn't fancy, he wasn't powerful, but he was, and he was accountable. And that was the good.
Certainly, kindness is a factor. And I think that's one of the things that we could be fostering. I do think, Mark, when you talk about how it would be difficult to mentor, I have a Gen Z stepson, and it's hard because you would think that the generations wouldn't be that different, but they are. What they've been exposed to, what they think, they have a tremendous amount of confidence, yet no confidence. You know, they have confidence in certain things because they had a GPS all their life, they ought to get somewhere. But if you took it away, they'd be totally lost. But the other thing is what you said about your steps, you know, I think the hardest thing to teach young people, although the steps have become more difficult, because I remember my dad, you know, he started at a bank as a teller and became a senior vice president. The steps were far more evident years ago. But the idea of just taking the first step, taking the next step, you know, the idea of like, you don't know what's going to happen if you take that job at the coffee shop, which you think is beneath you, but you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know what it's going to do. You don't know what the next stop is going to be. You don't know. Just going through open little openings, little possibilities. And it's not just following your bliss, you know, because that following your bliss stuff is crap. But it's following your curiosity, like you said. It's like following, like, I don't know what this is. I don't know if it'll help me at all, but it's a step. And there's so much fear, I think, of hearing no or being wrong. And we all, I think, were exposed to a lot of times when people said no to us. Women would say, no, I don't want to go out with you.
Well, with you, Bill, yeah.
Yeah. Jobs, like, no, I don't, you're not getting that job. You know, like what happened? It's funny. I kind of mentor this kid from Spain, and I'm like, he goes like, well, what do I do? He flies around, he does cargo, and he's can't find dates. I said, well, sit at the bar. He goes, what am I going to do? Sit at the bar? It's like, just say hello, just talk. You know, well, what if they don't want me? Then they'll say, shut up, don't. It's not, it's just putting yourself out, taking a step. And it just seems like there's a great fear today of like the first step is so monumental. Like everything is combined into that step is the step of a lifetime, as opposed to just a little step.
I stopped at a gas station this morning, got a pack of gum after I filled up, and the guy behind the counter might have been 60, and he wasn't very well kept, and he was obviously not a man of great wealth, but he was so much fun. He was so much fun to talk to. And he was having fun. And at the end of our interaction, he said, you know, you got to choose gratitude. I don't know, there's something about that kind of interaction that you can have anywhere if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't care what they're doing. You can have such a wonderful time with other people. But it's a choice. It is a choice. It's a choice of, that entails some risk, but it's the opposite of saying, I ain't going to do it. It ain't going to work out. And I think we're all people that grew up somehow inculcated with the idea that you take a leap all the time when you reach out to others, when you take a task on that you haven't done before, when you go someplace you haven't been. And we had a certain trust that we could make things okay, whatever we decided to do, go for a walk, clean the basement. We could do it and we would find an adventure in it. And I wonder how much that's been leached out of people. That they sit there and go, it's not worth it. Nothing, it's not going to do anything. I'm not going to get anywhere from it. There's nothing in it for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
We're
heard
all
from-
okay that way. And I don't know why we are, and so many people aren't, that are young men today.
Yeah.
Well, that acceptance of it's okay to be judged and it's okay to make a mistake. I'm safe.
Yeah,
I have a
that's an
little
important
bit.
part of it. Yeah.
It's hard for somebody younger who feels judged, feels that if they make a mistake, it's consequential of asking a girl and then being denied, or of trying to do something like reach out and say hello to somebody.
If they take that job serving coffee and biscuits, they'll still be a failure. What a wonderful thing that would be to do. I'm too old to do it now.
Well,
But give people food and talk to them about their day and how much
yeah.
fun we could have.
No, I agree. I think there's all these things, the dignity of work, they all have possibilities. They all have possibilities of encounter.
And they do come from the top too, Bill, right? I mean, like you're saying, Mark, even at Starbucks, the new CEO, their whole focus is on the person, not being a robot. Take more time, look somebody in the eye, thank them for coming in, chat with them.
I
And
didn't know that, but he has
that's-
turned them
It's
around.
coming from the top. And
Yeah, they're making them more, they're going less from the drive-through to more like the seated place where people can gather. And, I think kids, they are looking for that. I mean, they don't drink as much. They probably do more gummies or things like that. But, they are looking for, every time you have an activity or something, I think people show up, whether it's a board game night or something like that. You just have to, if you want to mentor kids, you just have to say, get out as much as possible. Enjoy it while you can. Mike's having his knee replaced tomorrow, and I'm getting mine the 6th. So we'll be inside for a while. But
Are you getting your knees replaced, both of you?
yeah, within a couple days.
Boy, I
Wow.
could use a new knee. Man, good for
join
you.
us. Join us. It's great.
But they won't put foreign bodies in me because of my immune system. But
Oh,
Uh,
right.
yeah. Yeah, I have a daughter. I have very accomplished children and 6 kids. And the ones that work the least have the most friends, real friends, not workplace friends. I worked a lot and I worked hard, and my friends were my colleagues. I didn't have a social life, but I enjoyed my colleagues and my students and the learners around me and the patients. And I didn't have a social life, but I have a daughter who works a couple days a week, just enough to maintain. And she has so many friends and they love her. And she's not attractive in a traditional sense. She's kind of overweight, but she is so smart and so funny. And she lives a life I never would have lived.
Mhm.
She has friends after friends, and she's with them all the time, doing walks, going out to bars, going out to eat. But she lives very minimally otherwise, you know. It's such an interesting take on how to live. And Mary, my wife, wrings her hands because Alex isn't making a lot of money and getting ahead and this and that. And I'm different. I sort of envy her. Contentment with the happiness of people she knows and loves. It's nothing like what I had growing through my life. It's interesting.
No, I can see that. And, you know, women are so much better at that. I'll go out and I'll see this whole table of women having a really nice time. And then you see it all over here. It's more women going out, you know. And for some reason, guys, unless we have something particular to do, we just don't get together, you know, like, oh, there's either got to be golf or some event or something. You know, if you call up your friend and go like, hey, let's all go out, have coffee. You know, it
No,
doesn't,
that's very true. Has a lot of friends and they do yoga and Zumba and things like that, but they go out and eat afterwards and stuff.
yeah.
And they just hang, you know, so I don't do anything like that.